لكل أبنائها أبناء الجالية في الخارج. الدكتور عبد الحكيم الساحل، طبيب مختص في الأشعة بألمانيا، شكرا جزيلا لكم.
شكرا جزيلا على الاستضافة أختي جميلة، وبارك الله فيكم. نتمنى إن شاء الله ما يكونش هذا اللقاء الأخير إن شاء الله.
نتمنى ذلك، نتمنى. ما هي إلا بداية لهذا التعاون الذي نتمناه أن يمتد لكل أبناء جاليتنا في الخارج. الدكتور عبد الحكيم ساحل، شكرا جزيلا لكم.
عفوا، شكرا أيضا، بارك الله فيكم، شكرا، مع السلامة.
في الأخير مستمعينا الكرام، مستمعي إذاعة الجزائر الدولية، نأتي إلى ختام عدد هذا الأسبوع من برنامجكم صوت الجالية، على أن نلتقي في الأعداد القادمة. دمتم في رعاية الله وحفظه، في أمان الله.
With Radio Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, has extended his best wishes to the Algerian people on the occasion of the holy fasting month of Ramadan, calling for strengthening the spirit of brotherliness and solidarity rooted in the Algerian society, which enjoys today security and stability. Under the instruction of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, 3 military aircrafts loaded with basic foodstuffs have been sent as humanitarian aid to the brotherly people of Niger. And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has stressed that the consequences of the cuts in US foreign aid will be particularly devastating for vulnerable people around the world and will run counter Washington's interests. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. Good afternoon. First, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, has extended his best wishes to the Algerian people on the occasion of the advent of the holy fasting month of Ramadan, calling for strengthening the spirit of brotherliness and solidarity rooted in the Algerian society, which now enjoys security and stability. The President of the Republic stressed that Algeria, thanks to its daughters and sons, has made a qualitative leap in terms of fulfilling commitments and achievements with direct impacts on citizens, particularly the preservation of the citizens' purchasing power and the fight against all forms of speculation, particularly on the livelihood of Algerians. Let's listen to the President of the Republic.
أيتها المواطنات، أيها المواطنون، يسعدني بمناسبة حلول شهر رمضان المبارك للسنة الهجرية 1446 أن أتوجه إليكم وإليكن بأسمى آيات التهاني والتبريكات وخالص الأمنيات. نستقبل هذا الشهر الكريم بما يحمله من نفحات إيمانية تدفعنا إلى تعزيز روح الأخوة والتضامن المتجدرين في المجتمع الجزائري الذي ينعم اليوم بنعمة الأمن والاستقرار، وأن بلادنا تمكنت بسواعد أبنائها وبناتها من تحقيق قفزة نوعية في تجسيد الالتزامات والإنجازات ذات الأثر المباشر على المواطن، مع حماية للقدرة الشرائية والحرص صارم على مواصلة مكافحة كل أشكال المضاربة والعبث بقوت الجزائريين والجزائريات. صح صيامكم، رمضان كريم، وكل عام وأنتم بخير. تحية الجزائر، والمجد والخلود لشهدائنا الأبرار.
On the occasion, President Tebboune also offered his best wishes to the national community settled abroad, praying Allah Almighty to accept their fasting and good deeds, without forgetting our brothers in Palestine, praying Allah to alleviate their pain and unite their ranks. Under instructions of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces and the Minister of National Defense, humanitarian aid was loaded at Boufarik Air Base in Blida bound for Niger on the occasion of the month of Ramadan. The humanitarian aid was loaded aboard 3 aircrafts belonging to the People's National Army Air Force under the supervision of the Algerian Red Crescent to strengthen the ties of solidarity between the two countries. Supervising the loading of the aid, the head of the Algerian Red Crescent, Mrs. Ibtisam Hamlawi, stressed that the operation demonstrated the spirit of solidarity existing between Algeria and Niger. She added that the aid, consisting mainly of foodstuffs, had been loaded onto 3 aircrafts belonging to the People's National Army Air Force. Let's listen to her.
تنفيذا لتعليمات السيد رئيس الجمهورية القائد الأعلى للقوات المسلحة وزير الدفاع الوطني.
In implementation of the instructions given by the President of the Republic, Supreme Chief of the Armed Forces and Minister of National Defense, and on the occasion of the beginning of the holy month of Ramadan, we are loading 3 military aircrafts with basic foodstuff for the benefit of the people of the Sisterly Republic of Niger.
أساسية للشعب.
And the Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Mr. Ibrahim Boughali, is representing the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, in the inauguration ceremony of Uruguay's President-elect, Mr. Yamandu Orsi, held today in the capital of the Eastern Republic of Uruguay, Montevideo. Upon his arrival at the Montevideo Carrasco International Airport, Mr. Boughali was welcomed by the Algerian ambassador to Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay, Mr. Lutfi Sbaoui, and a representative of the Uruguayan Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Under the instructions of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, the war veteran Minister Al-Eid Rabiga took part in the funeral of the late Sam Shafishuna Nujuma, former President of the Republic of Namibia and friend of Algeria, in Windhoek, Namibia. Presided over by the President of the Republic of Namibia, Nangolo Mbumba, the funeral was attended by several heads of state and government as well as eminent African personalities. And the 18th workshop of the League of Scholars, Preachers and Imams of the Sahel countries has wound up here in Algiers with a series of recommendations, notably praising the efforts by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, in favor of peace and development in the region. The workshop was attended by a large number of personalities from the academic, cultural, media and institutional sphere. In a press release issued at the end of the 3-day workshop held under the theme, The Challenges of Development and Peace in the Sahel region, the League confirms the close link between social insecurity and the spread of the scourge of extremism in the region, thus calling on the authorities of the region to fight against insecurity. Moreover, the League called for raising awareness among the most vulnerable components of society, including young people, to acquire the necessary skills to earn a decent and lawful living, to break free from unemployment, a vector of indoctrination, urging the member countries to strengthen their constructive cooperation between their elites, their populations and their states in all areas, particularly those relating to security, education and economy. To the Middle East now, where the Israeli army has pursued its attacks on the West Bank for the 34th consecutive day, targeting the town of Tulkaram in the northern part of the Palestinian territory. The Israeli attacks that hit the camp of Nur Shams have intensified over the past days, forcing the Palestinians to flee their homes. The Israeli attacks, which have caused the displacement of scores of Palestinians and damaged part of the territory's infrastructure, coincide with the beginning of the holy month of Ramadan, or fasting month. In this respect, the World Food Programme affirmed that it was necessary to safeguard the ceasefire enforced last month in Gaza, notably during the holy fasting month of Ramadan. The UN agencies affirmed that its teams managed during the 6-week-long ceasefire to reach 1 million people throughout the Gaza Strip and to restore the main supplying points. This came as Palestine's representative to the UN, Riyad Mansour, has called for an end to be put to the ongoing Israeli attacks on the West Bank and insisted on the necessity to reach a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. Addressing a coordination meeting held in New York with the members of the Committee of the Exercise of the Palestinian People's Inalienable Rights, he said he rejected any forced displacement of the Palestinians from Gaza. He urged for a total Israeli troop pull-out of the enclave and from those areas recently captured in the northern part of the West Bank in order to put a halt to the Israeli occupation and pave the way for the two-state solution as provided for by the UN General Assembly resolution. Meanwhile, the UN Secretary General, who will take part in the meeting, warned that the risk of further destruction was again looming over the Palestinian population unless peace and security are restored.
Next Tuesday, I will be in Cairo to join the extraordinary summit of the League of Arab States to discuss the reconstruction of Gaza. The ensuing hostilities have unleashed an unprecedented level of death and destruction in Gaza. Gaza has become a nexus of death, displacement, hunger, and disease. Hospitals, schools, and water facilities have been destroyed and reduced to rubble, and the risk of further destruction looms over the population. Tuesday's summit is an opportunity for leaders across the Arab world to come together and discuss the elements required to deliver peace and stability in Gaza. Their unified position will help guide the way forward.
Mr. Guterres called or urged all the parties to remain committed to the provisions of the ceasefire in order not to break down the deal, insisting on the necessity to safeguard the cessation of hostilities as one of the three priorities he intended to outline during the forthcoming meeting.
I will outline key priorities. First, the ceasefire and hostage release deal must hold. The coming days are critical. The parties must spare no effort to avoid a breakdown of this deal. I urge them to uphold their commitments and implement all of them in full. All hostages must be released immediately and conditionally in a dignified manner. The parties must ensure humane treatment for all those held under their power, and all transfers must be carried out in a dignified way and as per the terms of the deal. Humanitarian aid must be maintained, protected, and funded, flowing without impediment to reach people in desperate need.
It is worth noting that Switzerland will host on March 7th an international conference on the situation of the civilian population in the Israeli-occupied Palestinian territories. In the northeast of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, at least 23 people have been killed and around 20 others kidnapped by elements of the Allied Democratic Forces rebel group ADF. The armed group carried out attacks earlier this week in several localities in the Mambasa territory in the province of Ituri, which borders Uganda. The coordinator of one of the main civil society organizations in Mambasa territory said a total of 23 people were executed by the rebels in the village of Matolo and Samboko, adding that the toll was provisional. And the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has stressed that the consequences of the cuts in U.S. foreign aid will be particularly devastating for vulnerable people around the world and will run counter Washington's global interests. During a press conference, Mr. Guterres expressed concern at drastic cuts in U.S. funding. He stressed that these cuts impact a wide range of critical programs and that the consequences will be especially devastating for vulnerable people around the world. Let's listen to Mr. Guterres.
These cuts impact a wide range of critical programs, from life-saving humanitarian aid to support to vulnerable communities recovering from war or natural disasters, from development to fight against terrorism and illicit drug trafficking. The consequences will be especially devastating for vulnerable people around the world. In Afghanistan, more than 9 million people will miss out on health and protection services, with hundreds of mobile health teams and other services suspended. In northeast Syria, where 2.5 million people need assistance, the absence of US funding means programs are leaving large populations even more vulnerable. In Ukraine, cash-based programming, a key feature of the humanitarian response, reaching 1 million people in 2024, has been suspended in key regions. In South Sudan, funding has run out for programs to support people who have fled the conflict in neighboring Sudan, leaving border areas dangerously overcrowded.
Meanwhile, Mr. Guterres expressed the hope that Washington would be able to reverse this decision on the basis of further scrutiny. And finally, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been asked to leave the White House after a chaotic confrontation in the Oval Office with his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump, leading to the cancellation of the signing of a minerals deal between the two sides. Following a tense meeting in the Oval Office, President Trump said he wanted an immediate ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine and believed his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin was ready to strike a peace deal. Trump warned Zelensky that without striking a peace deal, he will lose UN or U.S. support. Zelensky, for his part, said in an interview with Fox News that Ukraine would not enter into peace talks with Russia until it had security guarantees against a new offensive. With this, we come to the end of this news bulletin. Time now for our weekly programs with my colleague Maryam Bershi and then with my colleague Mohamed Barzwan. I'll meet you again tomorrow for first edition, and thank you very much. صحة فطوركم.
Hello and welcome in Echoes of Time, where we uncover the great civilization that shaped our world. I'm Maryam Bershi, and today we journey to medieval Spain, to a land of poets and philosophers, architects and astronomers, a civilization that flourished for nearly 8 centuries, Al-Andalus. For nearly 800 years, Muslim turned the Iberian Peninsula into a center of learning, architecture and spiritual refinement. But it was also a civilization that faced internal divisions, external threats, and ultimately its tragic loss. A place where the echoes of diverse cultures, Muslim, Christian and Jewish, blended to create an age of enlightenment. But how did this golden age begin, and what led to its decline? Join me to discover the history of Al-Andalus, a civilization of light and knowledge. In the year 711, the Muslim general Tariq ibn Ziyad, a Berber warrior from North Africa, led an army across the Strait of Gibraltar. He was sent by the Umayyad governor of Ifriqiya, Musa ibn Nasr, with a mission of liberation. The Visigothic kingdom ruling Spain was oppressive, and many welcomed Muslim rule. Within a few years, Islam spread across the peninsula, and Al-Andalus became part of the vast Umayyad Caliphate. But in 750, the Abbasids overthrew the Umayyads, and one survivor, Abdurrahman I, fled to Al-Andalus, where he established an independent emirate in Córdoba. It was the beginning of a golden age for Islamic Spain. For centuries, Al-Andalus stood as a beacon of Islamic civilization. At its peak, under the rule of Abdurrahman III, Córdoba was one of the most advanced cities in the world, rivaling Baghdad and Damascus. It was a place where Islamic governance, scholarship and culture thrived. The Muslims of Al-Andalus upheld the Quranic command to seek knowledge, and their scholars excelled in many fields. Al-Zahrawi, the father of modern surgery, whose medical encyclopedia was used in Europe for centuries. Ibn Hazm, the great scholar of fiqh, whose works on Islamic law and love poetry are still read today. Ibn Rushd, also known as Averroes, a master of Islamic philosophy, who defended reason as a means of understanding Allah's creation. Under Muslim rule, science, medicine, astronomy, and mathematics flourished, with scholars translating Greek and Persian works into Arabic, preserving and advancing human knowledge. Beyond knowledge, Al-Andalus was a place where Islamic values shaped daily life. The great mosque, the madrasas, and the mimaristans, also known as hospitals, were built with the understanding that knowledge and health were gifts from Allah. One of the most magnificent symbols of Al-Andalus was the Great Mosque of Córdoba, a marvel of Islamic architecture, built to reflect the grandeur of Allah's house on earth. And later in Granada, the Alhambra stood as a palace of elegance, adorned with Quranic verses. Muslim Christians and Jews lived under the system of dhimmi, which granted non-Muslims protection under Islamic rule in exchange for a tax. This allowed communities to flourish, trade to expand, and knowledge to be exchanged. no civilization remains at its peak forever. By the 11th century, Al-Andalus became divided into small kingdoms, known as taifas. Muslim rulers, once united under Islam, now fought each other for power, weakening their strength against external enemies. The Christian kingdoms of the north saw this division as an opportunity. They began what they called the Reconquista, slowly reclaiming Muslim lands. The Muslim leaders, instead of uniting, sought help from outside powers, including the North African Almoravids and Almohads, but internal betrayal weakened them further. City by city, the lands of Al-Andalus fell, Toledo in 1085, Cordoba in 1236, Seville in 1248. The last stronghold, Granada, resisted for over 200 years, ruled by the Nasrids. But in 1492, under Sultan Abu Abdullah, also known as Boabdil, Granada was surrendered to Ferdinand and Isabella. The loss of Al-Andalus was complete. The fall of Al-Andalus did not just mean the loss of land, it was the loss of Islamic civilization in Europe. The Muslim populations, once thriving, faced forced conversions, exile, or execution. The great mosques were turned into churches, the libraries were burned, and an era of knowledge was erased. The Muslims who stayed and tried to practice their faith in secret became known as the Moriscos, but even they were eventually expelled. Al-Andalus was lost, but its legacy was not forgotten. What can we as Muslims today learn from Al-Andalus? It teaches us that knowledge and unity are the foundation of strength. When Muslims adhered to Islamic principles, sought knowledge and remained united, they built one of the greatest civilizations in history. But when they became divided, they lost everything. Even today, the scientific discoveries, architectural wonders, and philosophical contributions of Al-Andalus continue to inspire the world. But more than anything, it remains a reminder that no power lasts. This has been Echoes of Time. I'm Mariam Bershi. Join me next time as we uncover more hidden histories from history. May the echoes of the past inspire our present and shape our future.
Welcome. Today we'll focus on the Holy Quran and the Earth's atmosphere. Science has discovered facts about the atmosphere mentioned in the Holy Quran over 1400 years ago. In the relevant verse of the Holy Quran, Allah, God Almighty, swears by the sky and its functions of returning without specifying what it returns. In Islamic doctrine, a divine oath signifies the magnitude of importance of a spiritual relation to Allah, God the Creator, and manifests His majesty, the supreme truth, in a special way. Another verse described the divine act that made the sky seating for the dwellers of earth. Let us see what modern atmospheric science has to say about the role and functions of the sky. The atmosphere is a word which denotes all the air surrounding the Earth, from the ground all the way up to the edge from which space starts. The atmosphere is composed of several layers, each defined because of the various phenomena which occur within the layer. Rain, for one, is returned to Earth by the clouds in the atmosphere. Explaining the hydrologic cycle, Encyclopedia Britannica writes, water evaporates from both the aquatic and terrestrial environment as it is heated by the sun's energy. The rates of evaporation and precipitation depend on solar energy, as do the patterns of circulation of moisture in the air and currents in the oceans. Evaporation exceeds precipitations over the oceans, and this water vapor is transported by the wind over land, where it returns to the land through precipitations. Not only does the atmosphere return what was on the surface back to the surface, but it reflects back into space that which might damage the flora and fauna the Earth sustains, such as excessive radiant heat. In the 1990s, collaborations between NASA, the European Space Agency, and the Institute of Space and Astronomical Science of Japan resulted in the International Solar Terrestrial Physics Science Initiative. Polar Wind and Geotel are a part of this initiative, combining resources and scientific communities to obtain coordinated, simultaneous investigations of the Sun-Earth space environment over an extended period of time. They have an excellent explanation of how the atmosphere returns solar heat to space. Besides returning rain, heat, and radio waves, the atmosphere protects us like a sheeting above our heads by filtering out deadly cosmic rays, powerful ultraviolet radiation from the sun, and even meteorites on collision course with the Earth. Encyclopedia Britannica, describing the role of stratosphere, tells us about its protective role in absorbing dangerous ultraviolet radiation. The mesosphere, the layer in which many meteors burn up while entering the Earth's atmosphere. Imagine a baseball zipping along at 30,000 miles per hour. That's how big and fast many meteors are. When they plow through the atmosphere, meteors are heated to more than 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit as they glow. A meteor compresses air in front of it. The air heats up, in turn heating the meteor. Earth is surrounded by a magnetic force field, a bubble in space called the magnetosphere, tens of thousands of miles wide. The magnetosphere acts as a shield that protects us from solar storms. However, according to new observations from NASA's IMAGE spacecraft and the joint NASA-European Space Agency cluster satellites, immense cracks sometimes develop in Earth's magnetosphere and remain open for hours. This allows the solar wind to gush through and power stormy space weather. Fortunately, these cracks do not expose Earth's surface to the solar wind. Our atmosphere protects us even when our magnetic field does not. How would it be possible for a 7th century desert dweller, that is the noble prophet Muhammad, God's peace and blessings be upon him, to describe the sky in a manner so precise that only recent scientific discoveries have confirmed it? The only way is that he duly received revelation from the creator of the earth and the skies, Allah, God Almighty.
Muhammad, Ya Rasulullah, Muhammad, Ya Habib Allah, Muhammad, Ya Khalil Allah, Muhammad, Ya Rasul شفيع الله محمد بشير الله يا